So I'm not an editor for, for a journal, so but I can talk about it from a perspective of authors. So I think the first reason maybe if you are unlucky. So if you maybe just the editor does not like the paper, so there maybe there are no reason. The second important reason is the paper does not fit with the journal scope. So for example, for my research focus on public budget and finance. So the PA journals do not really like public budget finance papers, but now more and more public budget finance papers. So in the when I was a PhD student, so I tried to submit the really public budget finance papers to the general PA journals. I get some just rejections. So this is an important reason. So I think the another reason is that maybe the paper has no quality. So the editor may say something else to give you this rejection. So because I'm a guest editor for some journals, so I when I read the paper, so even the topic is fit with the journal, but if we think the quality is not okay, so it's common to give this rejection. Yeah.
In addition to all that, I spend a lot of time on the abstract and introduction because it's going to be the first thing, especially if they're going through, hundreds of submissions, the first thing they would see. And so that selling point. And so like what's kind of like I've also heard like bad writing can ruin really good research. So if you don't sell your research, and it doesn't mean like overclaim or make a big claim because that's usually bad in another way, but like, are you emphasizing the things they care about? So if it's, like PAR, JPAR or something, like make sure you emphasize like what's your contribution to the literature. Don't just do like, we do an analysis, results are found, it contributes to the like say what it is, like don't hide it. You want to be very upfront with that. And so I spend a lot of time in the abstract and introduction making it very clear, like this is what we do and why it's so great, this is our results and why it's so meaningful for practice, here's how we contribute to the literature. So don't hide it, be very upfront, because that's going to be your first impression on the editor, or then if it makes it past desk reject, to the reviewer then.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next hurdle is the review process. Many scholars say that receiving an R&R is only the beginning. What have you learned from your most challenging R&R process?
So the paper I was second most proud of was the definitions one, but one reviewer just really hated it and was like, you're the reason there's kids who are homeless. And I'm like, wow, that's very strong. Because there's this big debate about, so the whole paper was about the Department of Housing doesn't consider like living with extended family or something doubling up as homeless, but for Department of Education does. And there's this really big fight over this. And so it was someone, I'm sure from the education side, who was like, no, you're ignoring, and that wasn't the point of the paper. So that was a very difficult one. It was like 4 or 5 rounds to review. It got published, but I love when I celebrate the most when I get an R&R, because so much is out of your control. So much depends on luck, and like having a reviewer, I get so many reviewers who are like, you shouldn't do I had one recently who was like, I don't believe in statistics, you need to talk to people. And it's like, what am I supposed to do with this when it's a quasi-experimental paper? But at least when it's an R&R, there's something in your control now. And so when you get it, you go through each comment. I go through each comment. You respond to each comment. My goal is that they never go back to the paper, because I just answer it so well with those responses. I copy like pages from the edits back into the response to the reviewers. But what I've learned from this is make sure you like really give a thought, like put yourself in the reviewer's shoe, even if it seems ridiculous when you're reading it or something, like I don't believe in numbers. Really pretend, like put yourself in their shoes. How can you address that, make them kind of happy, but then also see it as a way to improve your paper too. I've had most of the comments I get are very wonderful and help improve the paper and make it so much better.
Very good points. I concur absolutely. And to add to that, I think that the toughest R&R processes taught me to not take things personally at the beginning. Maybe because it's cultural. I'm Romanian. don't take feedback very well. So I had to learn that that feedback is a good thing, or it can be a good thing. I think that I want to emphasize what Andrew was mentioning about taking each reviewer's comments and respond to it without being defensive. So taking it constructively, including those comments that maybe are not as positive. Maybe take a few days and detach yourself from the feedback. And again, don't take it personally. It's just something about the paper. You're still a very good researcher. You're a good person. I promise. It's not about you. But yeah, when you respond. And I think that advice that Andrew gave with having the information present in the letter is very helpful. So yeah, my advice is just don't take things personally. And going back to the comment that I mentioned earlier, any paper will find a place eventually. Just do your best and respond to each point. And generally, most of the time, don't believe those memes on Twitter that show a paper after the R&R process, which is half pizza, half whatever else. I think that most of the papers come out better after the review process.
Yeah. So I think most challenge R&R is one time. So I submit a paper to PAR. So I have 3 reviews. 2 of them are really positive, but one review says, I just do not like this paper, and he gives some really short comments. So I guess because I use instrumental variable estimation, so it's a really new method. So I guess maybe a review is a really senior old style corner, maybe, I guess. So this is why he does not like the paper. So I don't know how to revise. But fortunately, so other 2 reviews, they provide really positive and constructive comments, and then finally the paper was accepted. So maybe I have 3 lessons. So the first one is maybe you have to figure out which kind of comments are constructive and which kinds of comments are not constructive. So you can really closely follow the constructive comments and revise the paper. And for other comments, maybe you have to try to make them happy. So this is a primary missing. So to write so the second suggestion, maybe from my perspective, do not try to always debate or argue with reviewers. So I never. So even when you receive really stupid comments, always so try to be patient and clarify it to the review. Do not argue. So do not debate or argue too much. So another lesson maybe it's your responsibility to make your paper understandable, make it clear. So even sometimes reviews maybe do not really get some points from your paper, even if you already do many things in the paper. So, but it's your responsibility. So the reviews so it's not the audience responsibility to understand all the stuff in your paper. So try to follow the suggestions and improve it. So.
It'll get easier over time too, because you'll start understanding reviewers. So if I were starting out again has anyone used Claude Code at all? And not Claude, but like Claude Code, where it's on your computer reading documents. So I fed it all of my old reviews, like everyone, and it came up with personas of reviewers. And so there was like one who's like only believes in case study, one who's like, super like economist, like heavy quant person. But like if I were starting over again, I would really invest in like some of these AI tools, not to write the paper for you, but you get these free reviews. Cause like when she was talking about, like we were talking a lot, you can get this instantly now. And ask like some of your senior professors, like, could you give me like develop personas? I even made a little BuzzFeed quiz for like what reviewer type are you? But it's I would really invest in some of these tools right now, because it'll help improve your writing. And again, not to write it for you, but you get these free instant reviews on your own papers. It's going to be amazing, and I think will really help improve the research and help you get practice at how do I respond to these things.
And also lean to your co-authors, or if you don't have co-authors, your advisors to, take this in and help you think through these practices, because you don't have to do it alone, and it's less burdensome to share the emotional load, right, on top of the intellectual load with someone.
Okay, thank you. We've talked a lot about successful publications and effective strategies, but sometimes we learn just as much from our mistakes. Looking back at your early career, what is one mistake you made that you'd avoid if you could start over? Andrew?
So I would suggest not just chasing another project because it's easy, because you hear a lot about like getting more publications and things, but all publications aren't worth the same. So you need to think to like, who is this with? Is this with 7 other authors and going to like a very low tier journal? It's probably not going to contribute much, especially if it eats up a lot of time. It could be worthwhile if it's like, oh, I'm going to learn a lot from this process and see how it works. Maybe especially if you're like a first year student, but when you get later, your time is going to be your most important thing. Time and energy and emotions and all of it will be the most important thing. So where do you want to invest that? And so I definitely made some mistakes of getting sidetracked with different projects. Some of it's like publication, some of it's just other random stuff that wasn't the most useful use of time or energy. And so it's just staying really focused on what's those big ideas, who do you want to be as a researcher, and then coming up with that plan for how you're going to do that and reach it. It shouldn't just be like, oh, I guess I'm going to write a paper on this. What's your big research agenda? And even if it's like collecting all this data, it's okay, now I can think, here's one publication that's going to be this, or one paper that will be this. And so really changing my mind, the takeaway is like my mindset changed at some point from going from like, here's paper, here's a paper, here's a paper, to like, what's my research agenda? Papers are how I disseminate this new knowledge. I think I started working with more like science people. UCF, we have like 30,000 engineers and stuff. So this is how they think about it. They do a big lab project, and the publication is just the dissemination piece, and it's telling someone else about this research and why it's so important. But staying focused on those bigger projects, those big ideas, because time and energy is going to be your most important resource.
Just to add to that, I think the time and energy point is really closely related to what advice I have. I think that at the beginning of my career, I worked too much, and I worked during the weekend, and I worked long, long hours, and I think that I ended up being burned out a little bit. So I guess it happens, right? Because you want to build that pipeline and have and be productive in research to get a good job. But I think that being mindful of your energy and more emotional burden, and just having time to recompose and think, I think that's important. And closely related to that, pay attention to your co-authorship composition, and maybe build relationships with peers and share the load. Don't be the one that writes all the papers. I'm not saying that I did that, but just something to think about. And another point, maybe in terms of publishing, focus first on the R&R. So that's golden. We tend to get sidetracked by new flashy ideas or some hot topic on in the literature or from a conference, but focus first on the R&Rs, get paper published, and then focus on what you have in the pipeline.
So I do not think I have made any serious mistake, but because I'm always positive about the choice I have made, and always optimistic about the future. So, but if I have to mention one, maybe it's a trade-off between independent study myself, independent research myself by myself, and the collaboration. Because after graduate until now, so I spend most of time to focus on the research I'm really interested in. I have really clear pipeline to conduct to do research, and this is why I do not even go to conferences. So even in China, so this makes me maybe miss some opportunities to collaborate with other professors. But I don't think it's a mistake because there's a trade-off. But I think So just as I mentioned just now, so at the beginning of the career, so also for young scholars, so it's the ability of independent research is really really important. But step by step, so after becoming more and more senior, so I think collaboration network, so it's really really important, really really important. I think this is aspect I hope to maybe improve myself in the future.
Okay, thank you. This is the final question. To wrap up our discussion, I'd like to ask one final question. If you could give only one piece of advice to emerging scholars in this room, what would it be? Wenchi, you go first.
Okay, so a brief sentence maybe. So continue to do what you are really interested in. So develop intrinsic motivations to do research. So this is the most important suggestion.
On top of that, I think that from my experience, it's important to build a community and a clear pipeline, right? I emphasize that it's important to show, independence as a scholar. But for me, my community really helped me just be healthy and be productive as a scholar.
Yeah, and I'll second or third that. The community is very important. You don't need to co-author with everyone either. So when I was finishing on my PhD, it was during COVID, and so all the conferences were canceled. And so there was a group of us, very interdisciplinary, but especially the PA policy area that was studying housing. And so we just started getting together every month or two to just talk about what's going on, how's the job market, what are you working on, coming up with plans. And some of them I just started co-authoring with now, like 6 years later. Some of them maybe I probably never will. But it's really important to have that community because you get the support, you get to bounce ideas off of them, but it'll help you kind of like develop that plan too. Again, I said like, it's not just investing during dissertation time, but like it shouldn't be a surprise like where is my research going to come from. It's what's that big research agenda? What do you really care about? I like to think too like, one of my students, she says like study what makes you angry, but like what do you want to change about the world 5-10 years from now, and how can your research like help move towards that? And I think that's part of that too, of getting that intrinsic motivation, and then finding like-minded people who also want to see that change, and it helps a lot.
Thank you. We have heard many valuable insights this afternoon. And now I'd like to open the floor to questions from the audience. If you have a question, please raise your hand. And when asking a question, please briefly introduce yourself. Who wants to start? Yes, first. Mike, you know Mike? Or you can just...
Yeah, just come here.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. This is very helpful. So my question revolves around an issue that has kind of trailed the academy for a long time. There is, for decades, this question that the academy doesn't do a good job in terms of creating digestible publications that the average person can relate to. And it seems that even till now, we are not doing a good job with that. We write things for ourselves, and the average person is not learning from it. So based on your own experience, how do you think we as emerging scholars can address that challenge? And also, how do we kind of have meaningful conversation with our supervisors to understand the fact that digestible scholarly work actually has value? And research has shown that anything that is digestible that the average person can relate to is very user-friendly, and there is a lot of data to support that. So what is your take on that? Thank you very much.
So this is something that I spend a lot of time with my center, because we do all sorts of community engaged research, but dissemination to like policymakers, people who could use the information. I think as a scholar, it starts with do the good research first, because if it's not good research, it doesn't matter if they can understand it. And I think part of academic publishing is you're speaking to the literature and the experts, and that requires some understanding. But one of the things I'm most proud of with our center, we started a research highlights series that actually our undergraduate students, they help make these highlights, but they'll read the article and they'll come up with a one-pager kind of infographic thing, but it's like, what's the big takeaways? They don't go into the methodology, they don't go into the literature. It's just, here's what this paper found and here's what you can do with it. And we've done all sorts of things like why volunteers matter, some experiments, the criminalization one. So that's been very well received by like policymakers. We put it at our tabling events or when we go to events. And then another one is just like being friends with normal people. Sounds weird, but like the homeless services network one that started with going to happy hour and just chatting sometimes, introduced me to other people. They asked me to just come chat with them and we hang out sometimes. They have a roller skating club that I'm not part of, but some of my students are part of now. But I think that's part of it too. It's kind of just those friendships. And then over time, Gary Painter at University of Cincinnati, he does a lot of this too, but he likes to say like, then you'll be on the speed dial for them, for the policymakers or the practitioners, and they know like, oh, this is my expert. So when I have a question, I can just send them a text. It's not some formal thing. And so I think, again, starting with the good research, developing those relationships, the publication itself doesn't need to be digestible necessarily. This is my opinion, for the policymaker practitioner, but finding these alternative avenues like one-pagers have been very effective too as an additional way to do this.
And to add to that, and thank you, James, for your question. I think that there needs to be an alignment between the tenure and promotion guidelines and the public-facing scholarship. And there are some universities that do accept having public-facing scholarship for your tenure packet. I work, for example, a lot with practice. As I mentioned, I collect generally for my papers, I think 80% of my papers are built on primary data. So I worked with practice a lot, and we try to provide research reports for agencies and present at conferences where the audience are not academics, but practitioners, in order to hopefully support practice. But also my research is very much related to practical, I mean, not that ours, no, right? But I try to support the public procurement profession as much as I can. So even from the beginning of my PhD program, I was involved with various agencies that support the public procurement profession. So I try to disseminate my research with their avenues, be it workshops, webinars, at their conference and so forth. But I think, like, to the point about what our universities or administrators can do, I think that the most important part is to recognize this type of work, because as my colleague here was mentioning, there are trade-offs in what we do. Like, we are evaluated on research, service, in teaching, and our time is limited. So if there is an alignment between the policies and the evaluation requirements and the public-facing scholarship and dissemination of this type of work, I think it would be helpful.
So scientific research is usually among a small group of people. So not only in PA field and more in many in other fields. So this is common because this small group of people have commonly accepted language, method, and standards to evaluate the research. I think it's common. So, but PA field is really practice oriented. It's really a applied field. So that means we have to really focus on the research questions which is happening in the real world. So we cannot only imagine that. So we have to connect more with practitioners, with government officials. So this is what I think. This is what what the scholars should do. So, and another thing is we should have more channels to combat scientific research evidence to really policy suggestions. I think this we in China, so this is much better. So because professors usually they have lots of connections, lots of ways, methods to to make suggestions to our government officials. But the problem is that we have too much connection with government. So that means sometimes the policy suggestions maybe does not have really high quality. So because it's not from the scientific research, it's just from the maybe personal experience. So maybe something else. So I think that there's a trade-off. So about the scientific research and the practice policy suggestions, but a really important fundamental thing is that the suggestions from scholars should be really evidence-based, should be driving from scientific research, should driving from maybe causal evidence, should be causal evidence. Then this kind of evidence will be really beneficial to the government officials, to the general citizens. Yeah.
Okay, I think we can get more questions. Yes. Is Mike? Where's the mic?
Thank you for your thoughtful advice and presentation. I guess my question is kind of directed to Professor Wei and Professor Demand. I'm beginning my first semester of my doctorate program, so I consider myself a pretty new student in this field. And before writing a paper targeting an international journal, the question that worries me the most is this question fit for an international journal? Because, the main reason I enrolled in grad school was to understand problems in Korean public administration and provide a solution to Korean problems. But when I try to write papers for international journals, I'm kind of worried about whether the editors would be interested in those kind of problems. And I guess the question is how to reframe your question to fit a more Western or international audience. Yes, thank you.
That's actually a very good question. And I think I will start by saying that, in my opinion, and that's just my personal observation, is that editors seek currently to be inclusive of a global audience in journals. So don't be don't be shy to submit your research, because journal editors do want your research, how to write the paper. I think that just speaking to the theories of public administration and applying those concepts to the case of Korea, I think that would be fantastic, right? So you have fantastic data here, just answer the big questions in public administration. I think that would be enough. And again, don't be intimidated or think that your work is not doesn't have a space in the international journals. It does. Just focus on framing it on big questions on public administration, and then you say you seek to answer that specific research question in the case of Korea, and then explain why focusing on the case of Korea is the best approach, right? And what you contribute to the theory and the literature with the Korean case.
So this is a really common challenge for international students. I mean, what I mean international students, I mean the students from outside America and European countries. So it's more common in China. So because China is more special, So usually, so in social science field, so each project, each research maybe should have a context. So scholars can do research in Korea, in China, maybe in African countries, and we usually criticize the PA journals focus on Western countries. So, but I think to deal with this problem, so I think maybe we should not stress the context is really different, it's really special. Even in China, so we have really different cultural institutions. So even in this kind of context, we try to focus on the general theories, general implications. If you always say, oh, Korean is special, China is special, why other people will be interested in it? So this is only a context. You hold data, you hold stories, you hold context to conduct research, but that's enough. And then highlight the general theories, general research questions that people from all over the world they are interested in. So this is how we can sell the paper to people from other countries. Yeah.
Okay. Any other question?
Hello, thank you for sharing some really important tips for us. And I have a question about writing a thesis, because writing an article is really quite hard and time-consuming practice, but we need to think about what is the implications of the paper and blah, 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 a lot of things. So I want to ask you something that if you have any special sequence or routine sequence of writing an article, do you have a routine of it? Yeah. Any routine of it?
What do you mean by sequence?
Sequence.
Special skills.
Then first writing about the data and methods section, and then write about conclusion, or lastly you write an abstract or kind of things.
I don't think I have really special skills because AI is more and more popular. So AI has the best writing ability. But
Yeah.
I think to do research, maybe you should always read lots of papers to feel the style of the how good papers are written. So, and after reading a lot and writing a lot, and then you can learn
A lot.
you can have the sense of research about how to write good papers.
I can-
So so I think this requires long time practice.
Yes,
So
yes.
I don't think successful scholars have really secret
Okay,
skills.
okay, got
Maybe
it.
you
Thank you.
have.
Thank you.
If I ever feel stuck, I start with what's easiest. And so sometimes I mentioned too, like I've used the same data for a lot of papers. I can write that not just quickly, but like without even much thinking. And then I'm like, oh wow, I have like 2 pages already. Let's keep going. So if I ever get stuck, I start kind of doing that. Or topics instances. So good writing. Very important. Oh, was that gonna be yours? Oh, was that gonna be yours? Topic sentence? Oh no. Very important. So sometimes too, I'm like, I don't know exactly what I want to say, but I know this is the point. So here's my topic sentence, and that's how I start organizing it. I don't know if I necessarily have a sequence. I do lots of jumping around. I usually do save the discussion for the end though, because one thing I like to do throughout, you mentioned something about the like research questions and theory and methods matching. I like to be very parallel throughout, so I'll do lots of editing, but that's why I wait for the discussion too, because I'm like, well, what's my method and my contribution? Introduction's a very good selling point, and I'll mirror my introduction and my discussion, because the introduction, I'm like, I will answer these questions, I will contribute with these ways, then discussion is, here's how I did all these things. But if I ever get stuck, I just like, okay, I'm gonna get this, like where my data came from, because I know this and it's really easy.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think that there is a way of writing papers, at least the quantitative ones. So if you look at the journals or like the top journals, they all follow the same structure. If you want to write a qualitative paper, that's going to be a little bit harder, but try maybe to find one that from an author that you really admire, right? Again, I mean, I think that's hard when you're a student. Maybe ask advice from your advisors. What's a good paper that's qualitative, and follow that structure, and it gets you unstuck, I guess.
Oh, and that's why I like to co-author a lot too, because then we can work it out together. Yell at each other.
Okay, we are running out of time, so I think we can get one final question from the floor. Okay, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I would like some insights from the three of you about how to handle the frustration that comes with rejection upon rejection upon rejection, especially when you are starting out Sometimes it can be very daunting. And I have few friends who technically quit the academy because they felt it's no longer a field for them. So how do you become more resilient? So that's something that I would like your insight on. Thank you.
That is a very, very good question. I think I will go back to what I mentioned a little bit earlier about the importance of community and not being alone, or not to think that you're alone in this. So talk about it. Like if you have co-authors, right? Talk about the rejection with your co-authors and make a plan to like submit somewhere else. Because as I mentioned, every paper can find a home eventually, right? So talk about it, I think, or that's my strategy. I like to talk about my feelings because it helps. And it's frustrating and it's stressful and it's hard. Rely on your community. That's one thing. And then the other thing, if it's not a desk reject and you have some feedback, maybe take a few days, like leave the feedback aside, take a few days and then read it after all the anger passes, because yes, there is anger because we're all stressed. We want to publish and we're pressured by the publish or perish paradigm. So yeah, my focus is on community.
Great question. So a story I tell at mentoring sessions like this. Is anyone a baseball fan? No? Oh man. Okay. So one of the best hitters in the MLB was Ichiro Suzuki, and he got over 300 batting average, which means 30% of the time he got a hit and got on base. And that's the best ever. So 30%. So I've gone through to all my submissions, like good like researchers will be like, papers get rejected even more than that. The acceptance rate is low. But my story I tell, back when I was like 7 years old, I was playing baseball and I struck out. And I went over to my mom crying, and she's like, do you think Mark McGwire, like my favorite baseball player, cries every time he strikes out? No. So that's how I became more resilient. So wait, too, with you get into that community, you know, like this is the norm. It's part of the normal process of getting through it. It's coming up with that plan. How will I do it going forward? But even the very successful people, it's very low. Acceptance rate immediately. It's very rare. Like the first time I submit a paper to a journal, it's going to get accepted. So, but that community really helps in understanding like this is just part of the process. Here's how I can make a plan going forward.
And with those 24 publications that I have, I've been rejected a lot. So there was a lot of anger.
So I have a different answer to this question. So maybe it's not right. It's my personal answer. So if you do not want to get so many rejections, just submit the next paper. So for example, for me, so I write only 1 or 2 papers each year. So and I really focus on the quality. I want to make it the really good paper, and then I submit. So definitely I get some rejections, but because I do not submit so many papers, I get less rejections. But there's a trade-off. If you run lots of papers, so definitely you will get lots of rejections, but you have more opportunities. Maybe you have, if you're lucky, so you have more opportunities to get more published papers. But if you run less paper, you really focus on the quality, and then you also have really higher opportunities to get published. So there's a trade-off. So according to personal experience, personal style. Yeah.
I agree with that.
Thank you.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock. I'd like to thank our panelists, Dr. Ana Maria Demand, Dr. Wenqi Wei, and Dr. Andrew Sullivan. I'm very sure that the students and early career scholars in this room have gained valuable insights and inspirations and advices today. Please join me in giving our panelists a round of applause. Thank you all for attending. Enjoy the rest of, not the conference, but dinner. Thank you.